Hello, dear viewers. A new original story. Nina. I finally decided everything. We're going to Key West. The train tickets are already in my pocket. And most importantly, Dennis, Tim, and little Mike are coming with us. Larissa needs a break from motherhood. And you and I need a shake-up. We need to, get out of our comfort zone. This announcement burst into the quiet Saturday evening louder than a fire alarm. Nina froze in the middle of the living room, a neatly folded silk sarong in her hands. She looked at her husband, Stan, who stood in the doorway with his chest puffed out in pride. In Nina's mind, numbers, routes, and months of overtime flashed instantly. All year, she had been pulling two major projects at work for one single goal. The Maldives. Crystal ocean, white sand, an overwater villa, and an absolute absence of worries. The money, honestly earned by her own wit and sleepless nights in front of the monitor, lay in a special account. Stan had not participated financially in the vacation, but actively promoted the philosophy. No need to spend a fortune on palm trees when you have the Gulf Coast. And now, the Gulf Coast had acquired 3 nephews. Dennis was 10, the age of endless protest. Tim was 7, a walking generator of chaos. Mike had just turned 4, and moved through the world exclusively with a destructive tornado of toys. Hold on. Polina's voice sounded deceptively even, without a single hysterical note. She carefully placed the sarong on the back of the armchair. You bought tickets to Key West for 5 people? Exactly. Stan rubbed his hands joyfully, clearly expecting thunderous applause for his ingenuity. I booked a whole compartment. Can you imagine how cozy? Our own company. Mike goes without a seat. He'll snuggle with us on the bunk. He's tiny, but what a saving. And Larissa almost cried with gratitude. She said we simply saved her. A whole compartment, 3 other people's kids, the youngest without a seat. A 2-4-hour journey. Nina spoke each word precisely, feeling the temperature in her circulatory system drop to absolute zero. She wasn't going to stage theatrical scenes with wringing her hands. If a man decides to turn your hard-earned vacation into a mobile daycare in a stuffy train car, shouting won't help. This required precision in decision-making. Oh, come on, Nina. Stan waved dismissively, heading into the kitchen and opening the refrigerator. Kids are the flowers of life. We'll practice for our own. You're always sitting in the office. You don't see the light of day. I'm doing this for us. It's a real step out of the comfort zone. A paradigm shift. A paradigm shift, you say? Nina slowly smiled. The smile was sharp, like a utility knife blade. Okay, Stan, I hear you. Stan pulled a block of cheese from the fridge, bit directly into it, and nodded contentedly. He sincerely believed that his unwavering authority had worked. It never occurred to him to look into his wife's eyes, where at that moment, their entire previous family life was being folded and archived into a dense file. The next day, during her lunch break, Nina didn't go to the office cafeteria. She walked briskly to the travel agency on the next street. The air in the agency smelled of expensive glossy catalogs and coconut air freshener. The manager, Ksenia, with perfect hair, flitted her fingers across the keyboard. Will you be flying alone? Ksenia asked, looking at the monitor. Completely alone, Nina confirmed firmly. Book that villa with reef access. Ultra all-inclusive meal plan. Yes, I'll pay by card now. The plastic thudded dully against the terminal. The machine beeped briefly, approving the transaction. At that moment, Nina felt a concrete slab of resentment fall from her shoulders, replaced by crystal-clear pragmatism. She would not let comme si cravate come say at her own expense. She would not tear up her husband's tickets, argue with her sister-in-law, or demonstratively go to her mother's. She would simply transport her physical self to where she belonged. And Stan? Stan wanted to leave his comfort zone. It would be a sin to hinder a man in his spiritual growth. 24 hours before the train's departure, the apartment turned into a nomadic transit point. Larissa, Stan's sister, flitted into the hallway, dragging 2 stuffed suitcases the size of small refrigerators, a bag with plastic buckets, and 3 boys. Nina, my dear. Larissa rushed to hug her sister-in-law with such force, as if she intended to choke her from an excess of familial affection. I'll never forget your generosity. Boys, say hello to Aunt Nina. Dennis, glued to his smartphone, mumbled something inarticulate. Tim immediately ran into the kitchen, knocking over a stool on the way, and Mike sat on the floor and began methodically prying rhinestones from the pattern on his mother's purse. "They're golden, just a little active," Larissa chirped, adjusting her hair. "On the train, the main thing is to give them tablets right away, or they'll tear the car apart." "Stan, my hero brother." Stan stood in the middle of the hallway, puffed up with pride like an overgrown turkey. He alternately ruffled his nephew's hair and delivered lofty phrases about how the family should stick together. Nina watched this spectacle with mild scientific interest, like a biologist observing the mating dances of not-so-bright primates. "Did you pack your things?" Stan asked that evening, when Larissa had finally departed into the sunset, and the three children were somehow put to bed on an inflatable mattress in the living room. "I did," Nina nodded, zipping up her elegant, bright yellow suitcase. Inside, in neat stacks, lay weightless linen shorts, bottles of SPF protection, a couple of swimsuits, and a brand new e-reader. No wool socks for the air conditioning in a sleeper car. No industrial-sized antiseptics. "Why is your suitcase so small?" "I know. Girls always drag a ton of stuff to the beach," her husband grunted, stuffing a packet of instant noodles into his sports bag. "I don't need much. I'm a practical woman," she replied softly. And it was the pure truth. The morning of departure began with a local apocalypse. Mike screamed because he lost his green dinosaur. Tim spilled sweet tea directly onto Stan's sneakers. Dennis refused to carry his backpack, citing it as a violation of children's rights. Stan, whose philosophical aura began to fray at the seams even before breakfast, scurried around the apartment, trying to assemble this puzzle of children, bags, and his own nerves. Nina, however, was a paragon of Zen Buddhism. She gracefully navigated among her still-sleeping relatives, offered wet wipes, found lost socks, and smiled radiantly. The train station greeted them with stuffiness, the smell of hot asphalt, and the roar of a thousand-voiced crowd. Train number 227 stood at platform 3, resembling a green iron caterpillar. Sweaty passengers with bundles crowded near the cars. The conductor, a woman with a face expressing the utmost contempt for the human race, meticulously examined passports and birth certificates. "All right, 5 in one compartment." She gave Stan a suspicious look. "Child without a seat, on the same bunk as an adult. Be prepared. The air conditioning works, but erratically. Go on, don't hold up the line." The boarding process resembled an attempt to cram a herd of hippos into a car trunk. The compartment space turned out to be the size of a spacious closet. 2 lower bunks, 2 upper bunks. Stuffy air, permeated with the scent of old pleather and strangers' hopes for the southern sun. Nina actively directed the logistics. "Stan, push Dennis's suitcase under the left bunk. Leave the food bag on the table. The kids will want a snack now. Tim, don't touch the emergency brake. Mike, here's your sticker book." Stan sweated, puffed, turned red, moving heavy loads. The children had already started to divide the upper bunks using physical force and high decibels. The compartment buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Exactly 7 minutes remained until departure. A jolt of the car foreshadowed the imminent start. Nina sharply patted the pockets of her light linen cardigan. Her face expressed extreme concern. "Oh, Stan, we forgot to buy still water and motion sickness pills for Tim. Larissa said he gets sick on the road." Stan, who had just tried to squeeze his bulk onto the edge of the lower bunk, wiping his forehead with his sleeve, his eyes widened in fright. "Right, run faster." There was a kiosk on the platform. "Just hurry, Nina. Departure is soon." "1 foot here, 1 foot there," Nina briskly reported. She flitted out of the car so lightly, as if she had suddenly grown wings. Stepping onto the hard, dusty asphalt of the platform, she took a deep breath. It smelled of freedom. Her yellow rolling suitcase, which she had thoughtfully left near the car entrance, obediently followed her. Nina did not go to the kiosk. She walked unhurriedly, with inner dignity, towards the station building, bypassing rushing passengers. 7 minutes later, a hoarse voice from the loudspeaker announced the departure of train number 227. Behind her, a heavy metallic screech echoed. The cars shuddered and slowly crawled forward. Nina stopped near the glass doors of the station, turned around. In the open window of the passing car, Stan's distorted face flashed. He desperately turned his head, scanning the platform. Next to him, Tim's hand dangled, clutching a bitten apple core. She took out her phone from her purse. The screen already lit up with an incoming call. Her husband had realized. Nina dropped the call, opened the messenger, quickly typed a message. Darling, to get out of your comfort zone, you first have to get into it. Enjoy your vacation. Kisses. Send button. Followed by a calm, methodical tap of the airplane mode checkmark. The phone went dark, cutting Nina off from the world of sleeper car dramas and other people's children. She adjusted her dark glasses on the bridge of her nose, called a comfort class taxi through the terminal, and headed to JFK. 6 hours remained until her flight to the Maldives. The next 2 weeks, Nina spent in an alternate reality. It was a world where time was measured not by work deadlines and nephews' screams, but by the ebb and flow of the Indian Ocean. She woke up to the cries of exotic birds, not the sound of a falling stool. She breakfasted on fresh mango, gazing at the turquoise expanse of water. She swam for endless hours in water warm as fresh milk, observing schools of coral fish. Balinese massage removed the last remnants of office slouch from her back. She rarely thought of her husband, mainly in those moments when she sipped an icy smoothie and mentally pictured exactly how Stan was trying to fit 3 children into 1 square meter of a cheap motel in Key West. Her imagination painted vivid pictures. Stan, sunburned to the color of a boiled lobster, dragging an inflatable dolphin the size of a small boat. Stan trying to wash Mike clean of cotton candy and sand. Stan standing in line for hot corn. These visions added a special, piquant sweetness to her vacation. She reconnected with the outside world only at the airport when the plane landed in New York. The smartphone screen immediately exploded with notifications. The phone trembled in her hand, spewing streams of missed calls, angry messages, and voice messages from Larissa, her mother-in-law, and of course, Stan himself. She didn't listen to anything. She stepped out into the cool metropolitan evening, hailed a taxi, reached her apartment, and opened the door with her key. The hallway smelled of cheap shampoo and a faint whiff of despair. Her husband's windbreaker hung crookedly on the hanger. A single flip-flop lay on the floor. Nina walked into the kitchen. Stan sat at the table in semi-darkness. Outwardly, he resembled a man who had spent 2 weeks desperately sailing on a raft in the company of 3 wild monkeys. The skin on his nose was peeling and hung in untidy shreds. Dark circles as deep as the Mariana Trench lay under his eyes. His gaze was dim, like an old light bulb in a stairwell. He slowly raised his head and looked at his entering wife. Nina looked as if she had just stepped off the cover of a luxury lifestyle magazine. An even golden tan, a fresh face, a silk dress, lightness in every movement. "Hello, traveler," she said brightly, placing a box of exotic sweets on the table. "How was the expansion of consciousness?" Stan opened his mouth, then closed it. A dozen prepared angry tirades were clearly stuck in his throat. But, encountering her calm, impenetrable demeanor, they crumbled to dust. "You," he began hoarsely, clearing his throat. "Where were you, Nina?" I called. Larissa called. "Mom was going crazy. We thought you'd fallen under a train. And then station security said a woman with a yellow suitcase left in a taxi. I sent you a text, Stan." Nina poured herself a glass of water from the carafe, took a sip. "You were leaving your comfort zone, and I was entering mine. You went to Key West with Larissa's kids, fulfilling your ambitions as a great family savior. And I went to the Maldives." "The Maldives?" Stan's eyes slowly widened, as if he was trying to fit this geographical point into his inflamed brain. "You left me alone with them in a compartment, on a train, for a day, and then for 2 weeks in that dump in Key West?" "Yes," Nina agreed lightly. "You said it yourself. I booked a whole compartment, our own company. It will be cozy. I decided not to interfere with your male idol." Stan swallowed. Memories of the past 2 weeks obviously flashed before his eyes in painful slides. Mike. He didn't sleep for the first 2 nights. Her husband spoke dully, staring at a spot on the kitchen tablecloth. Tim got sick from a fried pie at a station. Dennis lost his phone somewhere near Baltimore and blamed me. They screamed, constantly screamed. Larissa gave me $50 for pocket money. 50? That wasn't even enough for ice cream for 3 days. I had to break out my credit card. I spent the money I was saving for new rims. That's sad. Nina clicked her tongue sympathetically, leaning her hip against the countertop. But what a life experience. Now you understand what 24/7's kids are like. That's not experience, Nina. That's hell. Stan buried his head in his hands. I tried to call Larissa to pick them up. She blocked me on the 3rd day, said I was hysterical and didn't know how to handle little angels. Little angels? They ripped my best shirt and drowned the room keys in the ocean. The motel owner charged me a fine. See how good it is that we didn't go on vacation together according to your plan? Imagine how upset I would have been if my shirt was ripped, Nina smirked. She walked into the kitchen, opened the window, letting in the fresh night air. Her husband was silent. In this silence, there was no aggression or desire to assert his rights. There was the total absolute defeat of a man whose arrogance had shattered against the concrete wall of female cunning. You're cruel, he finally managed, without lifting his head. No, Stan, I'm pragmatic, Nina answered, enunciating each word. She walked closer to the table. It's cruel to decide for me how I should spend my honestly earned money. It's cruel to unexpectedly dump your sister's 3 children on me, expecting me to endure it and smile. You wanted to be a good brother. You were. Well done. I'm proud of you. Stan sighed heavily, rubbing his sunburned neck. All right, I get it. No more surprises with the nephews. Excellent. Nina patted his shoulder with a light, patronizing gesture. Go take a shower. You smell of train car sadness. And tomorrow we'll discuss how you're going to compensate me for the emotional damage from the thwarted initial plans. I saw a great rocking chair for the balcony in the catalog. I think it will fit perfectly in our interior. She left the kitchen, leaving her husband alone with the realization of harsh reality. The apartment was quiet. The city slept outside the window. Nina knew with absolute certainty. For the next 10 years, the concepts of comfort zone and relatives would no longer intersect in this house. And that was her personal, unconditional victory. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.